Hey there, my name is Brandon and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're reading the title, as you can see, it says something along the lines of, should I be switching to Sony? Am I switching to Sony? Or why I haven't switched to Sony yet? I wanted to have a conversation today and just need some convincing from y'all whether I should be staying or leaving the Canon ecosystem, just based on my thoughts and needs. Now, there has always been a long time rivalry between these two systems, and honestly, whatever camera you choose, whether that's Canon, Sony, or any other brand that is out there, you cannot go wrong. All modern cameras today will perform well. But with that being said, that means we are plagued with choices, such as features and subtle differences that make our decision that much harder. So, before we begin, a little background on me. I started with the OG Canon Rebel T3i. I mainly bought it to make YouTube videos and occasionally dabble in photography. My next camera after that, I wanted a autofocus upgrade, and that was the Canon M50. That thing is legendary. As I started learning how to shoot manually on video, I started to think, why not try photo as well? And that's when I started expanding my knowledge and actually learning how to shoot manual in photo. And this was to the point where I actually started getting paid for it, to do it professionally for work. As my career started getting serious, I thought, hey, it's about time for me to look for an actual workhorse camera. And though I was primarily doing photos at the time, all in my heart, still, I had that love for video, and it was something that was necessary to have particular features in my next camera, thus leading me to get this R6 Mark II here, which is a hybrid camera. And one of the major factors of me getting the R6 Mark II was it was a perfect transition not only into the professional world of photography and videography, but also into the world of the full frame sensor. Now, quick disclaimer, this is not a review for the R6 Mark II, but rather sharing my thoughts and some comments that perhaps made me consider thinking of switching to Sony and whether I should take that jump now or later. Now, I want to make this very clear. When purchasing this R6 Mark II, this was based on my previous experience when I shot with an R6 from fellow friends. When I used that for wedding photography, it was nearly flawless and perfect for those types of events. The autofocus, the colors, just the whole workflow and UI from Canon working in that space just fit seamlessly. And as I got comfortable not only shooting weddings but also with this camera, I decided, well, my original love with a camera was video, so why not try it out? This is where I kind of started getting frustrated with the Canon system. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of awesome things that I've created and have came out of this camera, but I wanted to know maybe from fellow Canon shooters if there's any workarounds or if I'm doing something wrong, or perhaps from Sony shooters whether they face the same issue in their Sony counterparts, or am I fantasizing over Sony too hard? That's something you gotta let me know. My first issue is the histogram. A lot of what I do is run and gun, and I don't really have time to set up the whole scene like this right now. And when it comes to those scenarios, I have my zebras turned on and my histogram, and I like looking at both of those in conjunction to expose my image. And for some reason, when I start hitting record, that disappears completely from my menu on the R6 Mark II, and I don't know if this is a firmware thing or just a limit to Canon, but I've shot on a Fuji and Sony systems in the past, and I don't think they have this issue. I'm able to see zebras and a histogram simultaneously while recording, and I found that very helpful, and I miss it. So Canon, I don't know what's going on over there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Sony users, it's still up there for y'all, right? Please let me know. Sure, some of y'all may not really care about the histogram because, you can still work with the zebras on, but the second one for me is inconsistency. Now, what do I mean by this? Recently, I had a 2-camera shoot and I rented out a R7 as a B cam, and as I was using it, I was looking through the menus and I saw that there was a 4K fine option. What I noticed with my eyes is the R7 is slightly sharper, but why? I recently read that this is oversampled from 7K, while the R6 Mark II is oversampled from 6. Yes, there's a difference in the sensor size. This is full frame, R7 is crop sensor. When I saw the image of the two, the R7 is definitely sharper and contains more detail. You can already see this in the hair and textures such as clothes and skin. And I don't know, something about that just irked me because the R7 costs less than the R6 Mark II. I know you have the full frame capabilities, but I don't know, does this bother anyone else or just me? I don't know. That being said, I ended up using the R7 as the main angle and then the R6 as the secondary angle. Next is the overheating issues. Now, I do want to say, I know that in the previous model, the R6, the overheating is worse than the R6 Mark II, but it's still something that I want to mention. Sony users, definitely let me know if y'all have any overheating issues on the FX3, because that's one that I'm considering. Anyway, I notice when I'm filming on a wedding day, usually you're recording for long periods of time and I'm shooting on 4K 60. I don't know, I build up anxiety as I'm filming on this. I've done it with the internal battery and external battery. Both still have that overheating bar like rising slowly and reaching the very limit. And if you do reach that limit, your camera will automatically shut off. And this is not a good thing for me because in these situations with events, a first dance may be going on, or bouquet toss, or cake cutting. If my camera shuts off at that moment, what am I supposed to do? Turn it off and turn it back on? Like, no, the thing is happening then and there. That can't happen to me. And in those scenarios, I want to have those extra frames to be able to slow down in post, but instead, out of anxiety and fear, I switched to 4K 24, and it's not very ideal. And to any Sony users specifically that are owning an A7R5 or an FX3, are you coming across the same overheating issues, like it wouldn't matter if I switched systems? Please do let me know. Last but certainly not least, the lens mount system. Being my first full frame RF mount camera, my previous lenses from my M50 were crop sensor and don't really utilize the full frame sensor on this camera. So all of those lenses gone. So now what I had to do next was invest in some RF glass for my new camera, and that was the downside here for me. Last but certainly not least is the lens mount. Now, coming from a crop sensor camera, the M50, all my lenses I had previously were EFS, and sure, you could use those on the R6 Mark II, but it wouldn't utilize the full frame sensor, so it didn't make sense to me. Thus, I started buying RF glass. And don't get me wrong, the RF glass looks great, but my problem is there's no variety. You're literally just locked to Canon glass if you want to stay native. And that's kind of disappointing because I used to be on Fuji and you just had more options and different colors and looks that you could have on your camera. And I had really had fun with that system when I had it. Being on the RF, you literally just have Canon glass, which is a little boring, and I don't know, there's just no variety in it. You're just locked to Canon. And though that the lineup is growing, I don't know, there's just times where I look at Sony and I see a Sigma or a Tamron focal length that I believe would be good for my workflow, and I don't see a Canon equivalent, and if I do see a Canon equivalent, it's just far too expensive. And there are times where I've second shot for people, they use Sony. I also notice that the lenses that they have are smaller. Just the overall footprint of E-mount glass is smaller than their RF counterparts. And I think that in itself, me being someone that wants to have less weight and a smaller footprint is a plus. With all that being said, could I justify switching right now? I don't think so. And if I did, I may end up spending more money than I initially would want to. If I were to switch, I am thinking that I would go the FX3 route, but more likely leaning to the A7R5 route. Reason being is, though I'm primarily focused on video now, I think it's just nice to have a hybrid and have that option to be able to shoot really great stills and have more megapixels to crop in and just greater detail in general. So let me talk about a scenario where I do stick with Canon. I think my next upgrade path would be the C70, which I think is a super solid camera, and I do like the features that it has aside from the mini XLR ports, but I think it's would be the next step that I would take going down doing video. But let's say I'm gonna switch to Sony. I am thinking I would likely pick up an A7R5 and then perhaps down the line go to an FX6. Sony users, what do you think of that upgrade path? The main question that we've all been waiting for. Am I switching to Sony? To that I say, perhaps one day, but not right now. To be honest, reason being, all the services that I offer now, the R6 Mark II covers it and does it very well. It has great colors, a great intuitive UI, and I just know Canon like the back of my hand. But the thing is, I don't think it's enough to keep me on the system in the future. In a lot of the work that I do now, they do request a Sony workflow, and just by that alone, you may see Sony in my hands here soon. Any other alternatives to think about? Please let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the topic of today's video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here and a fellow creative and want to follow my journey, please hit that subscribe button and consider sticking around. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.